The number one thing is like pain. Like people love struggle. And the longer you can write about pain and struggle, like obviously like fear has its place and pain has its place in marketing. It's human psychology. But like the longer you can dive into the struggle, like you can just talk about how bad things were and people will just keep reading it. I don't know why humans are like obsessed like that, but I mean that's drama. I forget what show my girlfriend and I were watching last night, and it's literally like just people in relationships fighting. Like it's just drama and problems, like absolute nonsense, right?
Parker is one of my favorite storytellers, and he grew really fast, 30 to 30,000 followers on Twitter in like little more than a year, with his storytelling techniques and teaching people how to do storytelling. After quite some time of me trying to learn storytelling, actually it was with you, Parker, that I started to see frameworks and see how it worked and managing to break it down in my brain. So I really enjoyed that. So to start with, Parker, what do you expect people watching to take away at the end of this episode?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me on here, Fran. I really appreciate it. I guess the biggest takeaway would be there's a lot more value in your story than you'd think. And I think in the age of AI where content creation is easier and easier, humans are going to be more thirsty for human content. And that's what society pretty much runs off of, right? And so the more that you can learn to tell your unique story, create a signature story, you're going to be able to position yourself better than a lot of people, than your competitors, and just basically create a tribe of fans online that hang on every word that you have to write.
I love it, man. All right. So basically, I found you on, I think it was still on Twitter, but then you came over to LinkedIn, and you did it all over again, and you started building your following here on LinkedIn. It was quite amazing. But you had some really cool frameworks to share with us about storytelling. The first question I'd like to ask you and have you touch on is like, there is a limitation to actually sharing stories on social media. I mean, LinkedIn, we know we can't just write an entire story, so we have to break it down into like little sentences and hooks. And like, is there like a basic framework you'd like to share that you'd advise to follow?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest mistake people make when sharing stories is it's like endless, it's long-winded, there isn't really a point. Like it's just kind of like a free-flowing start to an end without any real point. And so the easiest thing to do is just the three-act structure. It's a start, middle, and an end. And then I kind of like to add a lesson, a solution, a takeaway, a punchy takeaway at the end. And really, when you kind of have to be more copy focused on social media, right? Everyone's scrolling. There's cat video. There's TikTok dances. There's shirtless models in the feed that you have to compete with, and so you really want to get somebody to feel an emotion as fast as possible, right? And so when you understand copywriting and you combine it with storytelling for social media, basically you can have four sentences of a story that really packs a punch and leaves someone feeling something emotionally. And when they feel emotions, what do? They engage with it, they comment, they share, right? And so basically just having a clear start, and it can be one sentence. Like 7 years ago, I struggled to start an online business. So like there, I've already introduced the time, who's there, and what's the problem. And so what a lot of people do wrong in the start is like, it'll be like, when I was a child, I was on my grandfather's farm. The wheat on the farm was long, and nothing was important there. Where on social media for storytelling, you want to be as short and punchy as possible, right? So like X time ago, I had a problem, client had a problem, and you're killing all the birds with one stone there, right? And then further introducing the conflict in the middle, right? And so like, what was the struggle from starting an online business? I spent years of my life, thousands of dollars trying to figure out how to make this work. And then what's the end? What's the solution? How does it resolve itself? Right. And then I found out that solving my own problem, scratching my own itch is the best way to start a business. Right. And then the punchy, fancy sentence at the end is like the emotion you want people to leave on. And there's either like pain or desire. Right. So like, if it's like, why aren't you scratching your own itch? Like, why are you still struggling when this answer is so easy? And when you leave people off on that, they feel something. So it's really important to emphasize the lesson at the end, the solution you want to leave them off on. And you can pretty much engineer from that I like to reverse engineer from lessons or problem solving tips and then combine that with the story.
This makes a lot of sense, and I've tried doing something similar to that before. I even paid for a webinar of some very famous LinkedIn copywriting creators, and I don't want to say that was all bad, and in general, I don't want to trash anyone. The problem that I saw was from what you say, unless the person taking the advice is a copywriter, what I've seen happen a lot, especially in 2024, was trying to take any story and tie it to pretty much any outcome or any solution. And this, for example, has led to some atrocities on LinkedIn, like what being held at knife point taught me about B2B sales. So, how exactly do we not fall into that trap?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think it does take a skill to tie in a relevant story into something that becomes relevant for your target market. But I found that like the wild oddball stories, and I made this mistake in the beginning. I remember I wrote a story about I went hiking in Guatemala and I climbed Mount Fuego and it was shooting flames out of it and people read it and they're like, oh, that's okay, but I can't relate to this. I've never been on a volcano, right? And so that's the thing is like you can tell a story about being held at knife point, but you got to remember, are people going to relate to it? Because like the goal is to get them to picture themselves in the situation, right? Like a story puts a movie in their head, and good storytelling is the person can picture themselves in the situation, and the more like you know, the more out of the ordinary it is, the harder it is for them to relate to it. And so, like, the ones that get the best responses for me are like, I locked myself out of my apartment. Everyone's done that. It's like the universal human experiences that you can tie into it is a lot more relatable, right? It's like, you get stood up on a date, someone drove by a puddle and you got covered in water. And it's like, people have experienced that. And when you can get them to picture that moment in their head and then weave in your lesson or whatever you're selling, it's a lot more powerful. So like I think those are abstract, I got held at gunpoint or whatever. It's great for grabbing attention, but it's kind of like I wouldn't say it's clickbaity, but it can fall into the realm of that, right? Like, this YouTube secret will make you a millionaire. And it's like there's no secret and you don't learn how to be a millionaire. And so if you beat that horse too much, I think that you can undervalue yourself and people will be like, oh, you're just kind of fishing for attention again, right?
Yeah, people really hate that on social media. I've seen so many people just trashing that kind of storytelling selling recently.
There's also the situational thing, no? Like if you go on LinkedIn and you start saying like sharing stuff like what you said, then about being held at knife point, like not a lot of people. This connects with what Parker was saying. Like not a lot of people have been held at knife point, and there's nothing to learn business wise from there. But these random situations, I remember reading like not on LinkedIn, but in email. You sent an email, and I remember you told a story about a cockroach. I was so engaged into that story, like a cockroach in the bathroom. It was crazy. I mean, but there's nothing to it. It's just an insect. Everybody has found an insect in their bathroom, and probably even a cockroach. But the way you told, the way you went into the events and step by step, it was amazing. Is there like, I don't know, is there a way to that you would say here's how you can engage someone like this? Because I felt engaged. I felt like I was watching a Netflix episode, an episode of a show on Netflix, like it was really good. Any advice there?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. And it's like the the best comedians are very good at making fun of. They're very observational and they make fun of like relatable setups or like obvious situations we don't realize that are obvious. And I think that's the kind of the best storytelling comes from the day to day things. And it's being observant to things that people usually don't notice. Like, I mean, for lack of a better phrase, it's like airline food. What's up with that? It's terrible, right? And no one's saying it, but there's that aspect. It's like so okay, we have cockroaches where I live. It's tropical, and I absolutely hate them. I'm from a cold place in northern New Jersey, and we don't have them, and they give me the creeps, right? And so like that feeling is definitely something that someone can relate to. Like when they see a cockroach, I know other people feel that way. But then to really like get it engaged is hyperbole, and it's exaggerating the senses and the reactions, right? And metaphorically saying like I saw this cockroach and I did, dang near jumped out of my flesh when I saw it. That comes in like the editing process, but I just try to always introduce conflict and then reintroduce conflict. Like South Park talks about the beats. It's like this happened, therefore this happened, but this happened, and so like I try to frame it as like a contrasting event, right? Like so the cockroach went under the toolbox, so I picked up the toolbox and I thought it would be there, but it wasn't there. It ended up being behind me, so I turned around to swat it. Therefore, it was on the ceiling. It's like by having this, like I thought I solved it, but I didn't kind of beat into it when I'm writing, I'm trying to do that is like it was resolved, but then there was a bigger problem. Then there was another problem, and kind of heightening the tension and the suspense just by using that framework. And then, yeah, anytime you can have like pet peeves are really good. Like I wrote about someone chewing with their mouth open and how I was about to have like a seizure and it drove me nuts and I was squirming in my chair. And then my girlfriend's just watching me act ridiculous. Like, what's going on? So like anytime like people say it's like it makes it entertaining. So like anytime you can use hyperbole and kind of exaggerate what's going on, the pains or the pleasures, it's entertaining. And I think nowadays you'll see a lot of content that's not like that. Everyone's using AI, and I'm not against using AI for it. But I think how to's and like just being boring isn't going to be enough to cut it. You have to be able to make people laugh or feel a certain way. And so those are just some of the techniques that I use. A lot of that comes from the editing process. But when I'm writing, I try to like sequence the events, and then anything that doesn't affect the ending of the story, I delete. So like I basically reverse engineer. What do I want to teach somebody? What's the benefit for them here? And then I reverse engineer the story, the events that happened, and anything that doesn't affect the outcome, I erase so that everything there could alter the state of what's ending. And then I can break people's expectations, right? Like I can build it up for them to expect something happen and then completely break it, which also elicits emotions.
That's absolutely amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, no
Okay,
problem.
with pretty much everything you're saying right now, I have like question after question in my head. They're just popping like one after the other, which is fantastic. And I hope that we get the chance to get into everything. But to reiterate, what you're saying is that it actually doesn't matter what the story is. And actually, the more boring the actual story, the better. But what matters is how you write about the story. Because I do see people try to write in a relatable manner on LinkedIn, for example. I'd say someone just bought a car yesterday. They're really happy that they bought a car. Probably was their dream car, and they're so happy that they finally managed to get the funds to get that car, right? But just in the way that I just explained that story to you, that's really boring. So I guess what are the ways to elevate a boring story and turn it into something relatable and worth reading and engaging for the reader?
Yeah, the number one thing is like pain. Like people love struggle. And the longer you can write about pain and struggle, like obviously like fear has its place and pain has its place in marketing. It's human psychology, but like the longer you can dive into the struggle, like you can just talk about how bad things were and people will just keep reading it. I don't know why humans are like obsessed like that, but I mean that's drama. I forget what show my girlfriend and I were watching last night, and it's literally like just people in relationships fighting. Like it's just drama and problems, like absolute nonsense, right? Like I was just there and I'm like, oh, she cheated on him and she found out, and now this couple's in a fight and that's all it is, right? It's just like problems. And so I would just take the biggest problem that you had on the journey to getting that car and like really just dimensionalize the pain of it. And by dimensionalize, I mean like, a lot of people will be like, man, I couldn't afford a car and I felt bad. But it's like, wow, because I couldn't afford a car, I couldn't get to work on time and I lost my job. And then things went worse from there because now I couldn't afford my rent. I looked at my kids every night and they were hungry. I couldn't get them the ice cream that they wanted. And things just spiraled out of control, all because I couldn't get this car. And then it's like, the more you just put the heightened stakes and like obviously be honest with things, but like heightened stakes, anytime there's like imprisonment, loss of life, just extremes, it really gets people's attention, right? And it's like trying to get them to be like, can you imagine the look in your kid's face when you can't take them to soccer practice because you don't have a car? Like those things, diving into that struggle, like I said, you can just talk about the struggle for an entire book and people will just sit there and be like, oh my gosh. And then they also want to know how you solve it, right? So like they're just sitting there waiting, like, what's the solution here?
Yeah, this makes sense. But one thing that I've noticed that people also overdo a lot is I mean, this has a lot to do with this, what being held at knife point taught me about B2B sales. Like, does it always have to be tied to something that's, I don't know, either a solution or something in regards to your service or anything? Because the way that I see it, it's either people tell some really boring, unrelated stories that no one actually knows why they should care about that, or people just wing it big time and exaggerate and try to turn everything into a business lesson. So I'm guessing the question here is, does it always have to be about business? Does it always have to be about solutions? I mean, how exactly do you end up disposed, for example, the one with the car?
Yeah. So what a lot of people mistake is they think they are in like, oh, okay, I'm in B2B sales business. But actually, like if you are creating content, if you're writing for other people to see, you are in the emotional delivery business. And so, no, does it have always had to have a solution or a lesson? No, but like not leaving somebody off on an emotion at the end or giving them a lesson or some kind of form of value in exchange for their attention and time is a disservice. And it's just like, okay, what was the point of that, right? Like I'm sure we all have that uncle or grandfather that just rambles about something and it's like, what was the point of that? You just wasted my time. And so like you have to have some kind of reward and payoff, whether it releases dopamine because they're like, oh, I learned something. Oh, that's the problem I had. And then you got to remember, like when people feel that emotion, that they feel inspired. Like one of my things is like when I'm going to write, I always leave an emotion that I want people to feel on top of the page. Like, do I want them to go wow or ooh or laugh or cool, and like really just sticking to that because when people feel something, they're going to see you and your content and your brand, and then they're going to like align the feelings that they experience from your content there, right? And so no, it doesn't always have to have a lesson or a takeaway as long as it's got like an emotionally moving resonance at the end, right? Or else people will just be like, okay, what is the point of that? And especially with the
Yeah,
way attention is in this world, I think it's more important than ever. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah,
yeah, it does.
that's an incredible rule of thumb. Having the emotion written at the top of the page that you want them to get away with. And there's like I remember a while back I studied the emotions that actually drive action. And it's incredible because the emotion that drives the most action, which would make people share what you're posting on social media the most, is anger. Because it makes you act, like a lot of people would think like, oh, I want them to be happy at the end. Well, yeah, but happiness just, yeah, leaves you happy, so it's funny. um but yeah, the most important thing is make people feel, and especially now that everybody's well, like you said, everybody's creating content with AI. The only thing that is going to differentiate you is the ability to make others feel something.
Hmm.
And you mentioned something here as well, and I've heard you say this a lot. Actually, the first time you said it, I started studying stand-up comedians because you mentioned this in the past. Like those guys are really good storytellers. And when I started doing this, I realized like there's some of them are absolute masters. There's this guy, Fluffy, Gabriel Iglesias. The
Yeah.
guy is incredible. I mean, the way that he tells a story, it's really good. Then obviously it helps the impersonations and all of this and the voices. But yeah, is are there any more like little hacks that you have like this to learn storytelling, like besides like probably listening to stand-up comedy?
Yeah, I like drawing lessons out of like I think like the best form of creativity is like combining two things to create something, right? And like if you're just reading storytelling books, you're just going to come down to the same things or like story for marketing or storytelling for content, whatever it is. And I find the most inspiration from books that are like almost irrelevant from the topic. Like if you read about scuba diving, there's going to be a scuba diving technique that I don't know, you've never heard of, but you're like, oh, that kind of relates to like stories and I can use it like this. So I think like to read about the foundation and know the basics is important. And then you get along to the point where you can just read something that's kind of off topic, relate it back to those foundations. But like, what's his name? David Deutsch, who's like a world famous copywriter, says, don't read books on copywriting. Read this lawyer's book on how to win an argument. And so it's like things like that can kind of closely relate. Those work really well too. I love just comedy writing because I think humor writing is very hard and getting people to laugh from writing is difficult because you're not acting, you're not on a stage. So I really just found that one interesting and combining that with stories. And then screenwriting, of course, like there's all kinds of formulas to writing movies, but there's really interesting techniques and exercises screenwriters use for like character development that you can kind of put into your content or wherever you're writing.
Yeah, we're talking about storytelling, but do you want to tell us a bit about your story? What brought you into marketing, to building a business online? I know that you live in Brazil. You left the US and you went to Brazil to the sunny weather, enjoying life as a digital nomad. You want to tell us a bit of the story?
Yeah, it's been an interesting ride to say the least. Originally from New Jersey, I became an electrician and I started traveling the world, working on U.S. embassies and military bases, and really fell in love with it. But I was working in a lot of war zones. I spent like 3 years working in West Africa, where there would be a lot of electricity, internet, stuff like that, and so I started reading avidly. And I'll never forget coming across the 4 Hour Work Week, and I got what's like some people call 4 hour fever. It's like, hey, you can work 4 hours a week and make money online and automate everything. As soon as I read that, I was like bit by the bug. So read everything about online business, and I think it was around like 2017, 2018 when all this happened. And so everyone and their grandmother was selling guru courses and how to make money online. And I ended up buying, like, I think it was like Ramit Sethi had something about like blogging and how to like start your business with a blog. And basically I started blogging for electricians, and little did I know that electricians don't really read. So it was a terrible business decision and investment of time. Spent money doing that, tried doing podcasting for electricians. And then I got onto an intro call. There's this really great business out there called Intro. And basically you can talk to like the founders of Zillow or Reddit, like famous business people, and you can talk to them for like 15 minutes and get advice. And I talked to Sam Parr, who's the founder of The Hustle and My First Million, for 15 minutes. And I was like, how do I get traffic to my podcast? And he's like, just go to Twitter. He's like, Twitter's super hot right now. Go over there and just figure it out. And so I did. And again, there was no electricians on Twitter. Like I was looking for electrical content and there was nothing there. So obviously there wasn't a market, but I was really interested in like the entrepreneurial aspect of Twitter. Besides all the, the posting and the weird stuff that happens there. But I was really interested in just meeting like-minded entrepreneurs and kind of just tried to build a following and struggled for 3 months. I think it took me 3 months to get to 100 followers. I had no idea what I was doing. I was writing about electricity. No one cared. And then so I just wrote about my story. I just kind of threw a Hail Mary and wrote my story. I used to be a janitor. I dropped out of high school. And at the time, I still am investing in real estate and things like that. So it's like, I'm 28. I used to be a janitor. Now I have a multi six figure net worth. Here's everything I learned, and just kind of like wrote the story about it on a thread. And I woke up and like my following exploded. It was pretty crazy. Like if I look back on like pivotal moments, it was that one. I got tons of DMs, tons of people shared it. I think it got a few million views. And then after that, I was like, okay, there's something here. Tried writing more about business stuff and like real estate. It wasn't working. And then just started sharing stories and writing about how to write stories. And it really just took off from there.
That's awesome. I mean, from your story, basically what I take is one of the biggest takeaways in business, which is you got to try a lot of things. I mean, especially as a marketer, I see like, oh, this is, even recently I had a funny kind of short argument in the comment section about marketing strategies. And what people don't understand is that like marketing strategies, they're thousands, millions of them, and they will all work. What you have to find out is what works for you. And what I take away from your story is basically this: like you started trying out stuff, and the most important thing was you spotted what worked and you started doubling down on that.
Yeah, exactly. Lots of failure. I mean, and it was just pretty much just kind of having the taste of the 4 hour work week in my mouth and not giving up on it. Like, well, I can have location independence. I can work online. Yeah, and failing a lot for years to get to that point. But like, yeah, like you said, it's kind of like just testing and iterating until you find a crack, and then you just kind of dive in full speed once you find something that works.
Parker, I'm really curious how you feel about the whole thing with the 4 hour work week now.
Yeah, I'm a diehard Tim Ferriss fan just because he's been so influential on me and like my life. I think it's possible. I have a mentor, Ian Stanley. Barely works, and he has a little team that he hires, and he makes a few $1 million a year. I think it's definitely possible if you're very smart, if you have something that's in demand, and it's difficult. I think you have to be very smart for it to build leverage, and it takes a lot of upfront work in the beginning. I think you got to work, the 80-hour work week for a year or two to get your 4-hour work weeks. It's definitely possible, but I'm also a workaholic too, and I get weird if I'm only working a little bit. I start getting distracted and getting into trouble, so I always have to have a workload on me. It's,
Yeah, this is what I was asking because I don't believe you can get to 4 hour work week before working your ass off before that for years and years on end.
Yeah.
totally
And
agree.
that's a myth I would like people to hear it diffused, like broken or whatever, because that's something that is being spread around on social media a lot, that yeah, you can do this just for a few hours. And uh I I can relate with the opposite. I mean, I've done both, and like in 2023, I worked maybe 4 or 5 hours a week with the previous business I had, but now I'm doing the opposite. I don't have days off basically. So I mean, there's both, and the building part takes a lot out of you. So I would like people to take that away from this, at least from this part of the conversation, that I mean, it takes work, and don't let yourself get convinced that it doesn't, and that other people are succeeding, because what you're seeing on social media is basically just the tip of the iceberg. They're just telling you what's going to get them attention, not the whole story. And that's an important one. So with this, I would like to move a little bit, like my basically what I do and what I focus the most in marketing is email marketing. That's what I love, and that's what I advise everybody to do. Yes, absolutely build a following on social media, but the first thing you should do is to start moving that audience onto your email list. I know, and I've been in your email list, and I know that the way you write emails is incredible, and we spoke about this before. Would you like to, for those, and I know there's a lot of people who are afraid of email marketing, do you have any tips or anything you could share to lower this fear a little bit, like of how it's not hard to do email marketing? Like it's basically the same as social media, but in a different way. How would you describe this? Because I know that's what you do.
Yeah, yeah. I love email. I love it more than social media. And I'll tell you what, like I pretty much built a business off the traffic of Twitter when I first started, and I had momentum. I was making money. I had a successful product launch, and then someone named Elon Musk bought the platform, and before I knew it, all of my traffic was just decimated. I wasn't getting any more email subscribers. But the cool thing was is that email, they call it the cockroach of the internet, right? Tying back to cockroaches in our conversation earlier, but it's been around since like 1990s, early 90s. It's not going anywhere, and it doesn't abide by an algorithm. So Mark Zuckerberg's not going to just shut down your email traffic, right? And it's a lot more intimate and personal. Um, you're pretty much sending a personal letter to at the point I'm at about 8,000 people, where algorithms restrict your reach. You could have the greatest content post, you could put your heart and soul into it and make something great, but you're stuck in between a cute kitten video and someone shaking their butt, and people are just not going to look at it. So it's great, and then even better is it's automated, right? As you know, Fran, you can set up sequences. Someone clicks on something, their interest, and then you can sell them something that they're interested in. And like, if you really want, I mean, I don't believe anything's truly passive as far as income, but email is probably as close as it's going to get. I know right before we were on this conversation, I just got a course sale. I built this course 6 months ago. I have an automated funnel. People sign up for my email list, send them emails every day, and they buy something. And so, like, yeah, at first it sucks. You don't know what to do. It's intimidating. I would just start sending them as soon as you can and get better at it, get the reps in, and then study who the best are. I mean, I follow a ton of email marketers and just see how they do it. I like their angles when they're launching stuff, when they're selling stuff, and I'll create a swipe file and kind of just build my email archive. But started just by hand copying them and seeing who the best are, whose styles I liked, who's funny, who's making the most money, and studying it, and then eventually just creating your own style. But it's definitely, if you want to start an online business or if you're on social media, it's the most important asset to have. Like I said, it's just so resistant to change.
Absolutely. You gave some incredible tips there about email marketing, but I think I have a feeling that it got a bit complicated for most people. Let's say that someone listening, or let's say that I just started my email list now. I managed to create a good lead magnet. People are subscribing. But because because I work with this every day, I know that the biggest fear for most people is not knowing what to email, right? Any advice there, like how can they just get through this fear and just send their first email, send their second email, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I would, if I was to start over, I would just start writing about famous people or famous businesses. If you have a favorite author, a favorite entrepreneur, a favorite artist, just start writing stories about them and what they've done. It works on social media too. People are scrolling and if they see, like, the secret to Taylor Swift's success, people are going to read that and be like, oh, I know Taylor Swift. I like Taylor Swift, and read it and find out the secret to her success. Right. And so, like, that's what I would start doing, is just breaking down your favorite podcasts, lessons learned, and just borrowing credibility, writing about other people. And then that way you're going to get attention. You're going to start kind of cultivating a fan base that's interested in the same things you are. Like, because I know a lot of people are shy about writing their own personal stuff, and that can be kind of vulnerable. So yeah, I would just challenge you to write about your favorite author, whoever you have tons of notes on. Break one great thing down that they did, and just kind of keep doing that. Like, did you read a good book? What's one lesson you learned from the book, and why should someone use it? So yeah, just start taking in good information and sending out better information.
That's awesome. Thanks, man. What is the difference for you between social media and email? Like, do you try to sell your stuff on social media? Do you sell only on email? What is how, like, and then when you write for social media or when you write for your email list, what's the difference there? Like, I spoke about this in one of the episodes recently with Dana. That way, understanding where your content is being consumed is one of the most important things, because that's what's going to make it or break it, actually. Because if someone is reading your email, it's just you and them in the inbox. Once they've opened it, you've gotten them to open. Now you just have to make sure that they don't get away. But if they're on LinkedIn, then they see your post, but just scrolling their mouse a little bit, there's another post right away, and it's probably a selfie of a cute girl or something like this, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. The highest ROI on the internet is email. I sell in my email. I get the best results from email. Email deepens relationships because, like you said, in the inbox, you're competing with spam. Like, 50% off discount on this kiddie pool that you don't need. And then if you have a good enough subject line, you're not competing with much. For like YouTube, I mean, you're competing with people that are graphic designers, script writers, video editors, that they literally spent 5 or 10 years perfecting their craft of creating a thumbnail and description, right? Where if you have a good subject line, you're competing for attention in the inbox is probably the easiest place. I have sold on social media, and the ROI is a lot lower than email. And I've tracked that before. I think the return on email is like 7 times more. And I have a way smaller email list than I do a social media following. So like the numbers are just there. Your ROI is a lot higher. Emails deepen the relationship better. Social media content, it's very structured. It's very formulaic, and I feel like that kind of robs from like human nature and like creativity itself. Like, you really have to start out with, there's hooks that are trending that take off, but you can't, like, hardcore copy, like and really fun stuff, over the top stuff really doesn't ignite and get a lot of attention on social media, because you have to be broad or controversial or trending in order to get attention. And to do that, you have to be very formulaic. And I feel like it takes away a lot of the creativity and fun aspect of creating. Like, I'm not creating for my avatar, I'm creating for virality, right? Like, all right, what's something controversial I can say that's going to make people share or get angry? And when you approach it that way, you're not necessarily doing your best work, right? You're doing it for attention. And attention definitely doesn't lead to sales. Like, I've had I just recently had a post that did 6 million views on Twitter in 24 hours, and it went so viral. Like my girlfriend, her face is on it, and like people she hasn't talked to in college were like, "Holy crap, is this you? Like this is you on Twitter. I can't believe this." Like that's how viral it went. Like people she hasn't talked to were pretty much sending her videos of her just from seeing the post. And so that only got me one sale, like 5 million views. I think I literally got hundreds of thousands of click to traffic to a sales page, and I got one sale. And that's because it's irrelevant to what I'm selling. And it's
Exactly.
just broad. Yeah, like eyeballs, like attention. It's expensive to get attention, but attention is cheap, if that makes sense. It's kind of like a contradiction. Like you have to put a lot of time in or spend a lot of money on advertising or something to figure out how to get all these eyeballs to you. But more often than not, those eyeballs are not very
The ones.
valuable.
Yeah.
The wrong ones, yeah, precisely. And so with an email, like if I have a 50% open rate, I can have one email generate me. I've had a 5-figure email before for myself and clients, and that's one email to 4,000 people with 50% open rates, and there's usually a 1 to 2% click rate. So like I'm I'm sending an email to 4,000 people and getting a way higher magnitude of sales. Where social media, I'm getting hundreds of thousands of people to click on it, and I'm getting one sale. So it just tells you about the relatability, the relationship that you can develop in email, and the ROI is really the
Yeah.
hammer on the nail there. Yeah.
Yeah, I've said this a lot of times. Like most people, there's a lot of people looking for virality, but virality is opposed to sales because the broader it's broad. It's broad. Viral content has to be broad because it needs to have a broad appeal. It needs to reach a lot of people. The content that sells is the opposite. It's actually it needs to be very relevant to a very small segment of an audience.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, I agree. There are some other times where it works. Like I have some fitness clients that I've written for, and fitness is broad, but for them, if you are like a broad coach, like personal finance or something, virality can work with like, hey, if you have this specific problem, like you're overweight and you want to lose 10 pounds in the next 15 days, send me a DM. And that combination kind of works. But like you said, it's got to be in a very competitive field, a very broad topic, a common problem. And if you're not like a fitness coach, an investor, personal finance person, it's difficult. It's difficult for the niches to make it happen.
Yeah, we talked about it a lot actually, Bran and I, that it's easy to go viral. It's actually very easy. Just post a rant. You know, it always
Mhm.
works. Post a very passionate and very sincere rant, you'll go viral, at least maybe viral, but it's very hard to go viral for the right reasons. But what was this story about X? This guy who went viral with a post, like a crypto, one of the crypto bros, I think. And he got like hundreds or thousands of people in the comment section who wanted him to create a course, and he just created a landing page. He started selling it before he even created it. So perhaps if you can get viral, go viral for the right reasons, then maybe it's worth it. But the formula to that is just unknown.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. My friend Ole, like the AI trend when it happened, I think he almost built a 7-figure course business around that in a year. And so like a lot of it can be trend spotting. And there is that point where like when things are trending and if you post about it, you get put in the trending section and then your post gets so much visibility that it goes into SEO.
Yeah.
You can pretty much like trend jack stuff. But the problem with that is like building a business on something that's trending and going up will eventually go down, right? And so I think like if you're the right kind of entrepreneur, like my friend Ole, like he rode the wave and capitalized on it now. But now how many AI people are out there? There's a lot of them, right? So like I think if you can see a trend starting to grow and position yourself correctly, you can really ride that viral wave like the crypto guy, and do it right. It's just being smart about it and not putting all your chips into that because eventually it will, you get into a bear market with crypto and no one talks about it. It's dead.
Yeah.
It's just part of the game and nature of it.
Yeah. This actually reminds me of something. This is one of the most trending AI newsletters in 2023 and 2024. They grew to God knows how many subscribers. They probably have over 100K. and it was two or three guys that were running that. So they grew so fast, and they got acquired. I think it was HubSpot who bought them. I don't really remember. But essentially, they bought them out because they wanted the email list, right? This was the
Hmm.
price they paid for the email list. Wasn't really the brand, because the brand wasn't, something like Coca-Cola or Nike or something, right? And the funny thing is, it's probably not very funny. It's kind of tragic as well that two of the guys that built that newsletter, they got invited to move over after the acquisition, but the third one wasn't. So he got off the wave of the trend. He sold what he created, and he was just literally standing there and just wondering, what the hell am I going to do now? I can't do the same thing all over again because we already sold it and the trend is over. No one's that interested in AI anymore. So what am I going to do now?
Yeah, now it's longevity. it's,
Yeah,
it's now you got to live forever and document it and then sell
yeah, absolutely.
it.
For example, yeah,
It's always about the list. I mean, smart businesses know that. And I actually wrote about this recently. That's the reason why Musk bought Twitter. I mean, he could have borrowed a couple of engineers from his companies and built a much better platform than Twitter. But then he wouldn't have the users. And Twitter
yeah,
already had the users. It's always about the list. That's why Facebook bought WhatsApp. That's why Facebook bought Instagram. It's always about the user base, the list. The list is everything.
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to a multi post exit founder. He's a great friend of mine. He built like one of the first dating apps. We are talking about dating apps, and he's like, it's the worst business to go into. He's like, if you don't have the user base, like if people look for a date and there's no one available, you're out of business. He's like, you cannot start it now without like buying someone else's user base and pitching it to it. I thought it was really interesting. There's some where it's like you can't even get started now because of the limitations. Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have Rajendra asking, how will AI impact pure human content creation for viewership? AI seems to be at a level, say, for how-to videos where people may not have a need for human content or less of it. Oh, I have so much to say about that, but Parker, it's all you.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Like I'm not a tech expert, I could be wrong, but like I know Neil Patel, who's a super famous marketer. His agency performed an A/B test, and they had blog content written by a human and blog content written by AI, and they sent
I
the
saw
same
that.
amount of traffic to it. Yeah, and human content had a 5.5% better performance rate, or it was like 5 times better. So like 500 times better performance rate. It was something insane. And so like the money he made off that blog post, even though he paid writers more for the time that they put in, he made more money. And so like I don't know, I read emails too, and like I'll use it to create different drafts. I always write my rough draft first, and to make sure it comes from my brain and the message is across. And there's cool things you can do, like okay, provide me 20 different subject lines for this, and see which one works best.
Yeah, I do that.
But I think there is like people can tell, like you can just kind of tell. You can read the wordings. It's just people can see things, and there's a lot of indicators, right? Like I always see people like, and here's the kicker. Like no one ever says that, but every AI email has, and here's the kicker. So like there's always red flags once you start to notice that stuff. I think people also want validation. Like there's been chatbots around forever. I don't go to chatbots for problems. Like if you're in customer service, even with AI chatbots now that are super intelligent, like I just want to talk to a person on the phone. Um, I think it's not going to be the whole world-ending human existential crisis that it's made out to be. There's a lot of fear marketing around it, and granted, it is a disruptor. I think things will change, and markets will shift. Um, but I think at the end of the day, humans are just going to want to crave things that are human. And if you just lean into that and just don't use AI for how tos, like really use your brain and your own experiences, like here's how to build a business, and it's like okay, step one, I screwed up and I made a blog for electricians that was for a market that didn't exist. AI is not going to write that, and it's like my own
Never.
experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so like if you use your brain, I think it's going to be more valuable than ever, because we're humans, like we all want to take shortcuts. Like, why not just use AI for this and be lazy about things? And I think that's really going to separate like the people who are the experts from the people that are just taking shortcuts.
Yeah, there's no relatability in AI content, and yes, they will. They're really good. If you want a how-to, wiki sort of how-to, then definitely AI will create that, and they will create it at scale much better than humans. But again, it goes back to the story, and that's why storytelling is more important now than ever. Because what you said, the one thing that you said, I've repeated this a lot of times, the more AI there is in the mix, the more people will crave for human connection. And human connection in content is storytelling.
I would say that I would love to challenge the concept of AI being that detrimental for copywriting, simply because I think that being ready to plug in all the effort you need to actually tell your stories to AI will actually deliver a good enough result, I think. But now then this begs another question, and this is this worth the effort instead of just learning to write yourself and just do it yourself? Sometimes it seems to me that it's going to be harder to train an AI properly. I do think it's possible, but I think it's going to take you a lot longer than just learning how to write your damn copy. That's what I feel.
Probably. I mean, I've been writing copy for many years, and I still try to get better at it every day. But yeah, definitely. I mean, the basic social media copy is definitely, you can learn it quite quick because of what Parker mentioned before, that it's all quite templatized and very mechanic. And yeah, it's probably easier to learn it yourself, and definitely it will be worthwhile to learn it instead of, because even if you're really good with AI, how are you even going to train an AI to do something that you don't know how to do yourself?
Yeah, that's the point. So if you're a really skilled copywriter and you actually know how to train an AI, meaning you know how to explain what you do to ChatGPT or whatever, then by all means, like, go do it, save your time. But the problem is that this is not the person who's going to go out and start using AI for their content. He's going to be the person who has no idea about copywriting because they think that ChatGPT knows something more than they do, and the thing is that they don't. ChatGPT does not know anything more about copywriting than the average business owner who's not really a marketer, not really a copywriter. So I think this is the biggest misconception.
Gulam asks, I'm a mobile application developer, especially iOS developer, and I want to create my video course, but I'm confused with storytelling. Students can't understand the code, but they understand the story. Can you assist me with this from your experience?
Yeah, for anything, it's like stories are the best way to take complex ideas and make them simple. So I think for context of this, you're building you're using a how to build a mobile app course. Correct me if I'm wrong, and you're just worried that people won't understand the code aspect of it. And so anytime you can kind of weave data storytelling, again, Nia Patel is really good with data storytelling. Anything to take like, okay, you have this number, you have this big concept, right? Like coding, like I don't know anything about coding, so I'd have a hard time writing about it. But it's like, okay, what are the big problems of it? Tell stories of how people have solved it. How can you break down the complex into simple? And it's just kind of having these simple frameworks, right? Like, okay, you have a big idea. This person took this big idea. They had a problem. They solved this problem. Here's how you can do the same thing, right? It's like you can almost follow a hero's journey framework. Essentially, you were in a position, or a student was in a position where they're in the ordinary world. They faced a problem that forced them to make a change, whatever that maybe they lost their job and now they want to learn how to code. So they're forced to make a change. They discover a new world that they don't understand. They're confused and then they meet a guide who is you or maybe learning to code. And then basically they get a guide on what to do. They find an obstacle that's very common. You teach them how to overcome that obstacle and it ends in either failure or success. So I would stick around to something like that if you're trying to sell, or even if you're just trying to explain this idea. Like, all right, this is a hard concept. Why would someone need to be make why do they need to change to understand this concept? Why is it so important? And kind of breaking it down from there. So hopefully that helps.
Wow, Gulam, I hope you took notes. If you didn't, then wait for the recording. That's amazing, Parker. I loved it. All right, just to wrap up, we have Regenda following up on the previous, yes, we like to deal with humans, but the trend among tech leaders is to overly rely on AI. They are not asking for feedback like, would you like to talk to a human? Yeah, I mean, it's a business decision. And I mean, a lot of mistakes are being made from my point of view, and they will have to be course corrected eventually. So his question at the end is, could you recommend any books on storytelling for beginners, of course?
Yeah, I think Storytelling Made Easy by Michael Hogg is a really good one. Yeah, there's a bunch. Sell a Story in 60 Seconds was a great one. I forget what the name of it by Kendra Hall is. That one's very good. It's kind of weird. Like there are books on storytelling and they're very good, but for applications to social media or like marketing or anything online business, the best ones to do are copywriting books like Joe Sugarman, his
Oh,
Adweek
yeah,
handbook. Like all of them have a section on storytelling.
I'm
And
going
like
through
the
that one now.
copywriting, yeah, like the copywriters that have the section on storytelling, it's a lot more punchy and more applicable instead of like writing books, and novels, and screenplays. So I would read copywriting books and just look for the little sections on storytelling, and they'll tell you how to really get a framework that's really punchy and delivers the results that you're looking for a lot faster than, okay, I know the hero's journey. Now what? You know, do I like I don't need to write a Hollywood movie to
Yeah.
be successful in LinkedIn
You
or
have
anything. So
Donald Miller's story brand. It's a good one to relate the storytelling to social media and online marketing.
yeah, that one is one of the best. Yeah, Donald Miller's the man.
All right, Parker, this has been absolutely amazing, man. Thank you very much. Any final thoughts?
I just wanted to say that I'm going to watch the recording a couple of times at least to get your tips on storytelling and just work this through my thick head finally. But thank you very much. You had some amazing tips. This was really, really great.
Yeah, thank you. It was a lot of fun. And yeah, keep in touch. Thank you for having me here, guys. It's great.
Yeah. For people who will want to be following you, how can they find you? Find you? What's the best place to follow you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I think I forget my handle. You can just search my first name, Parker. My last name's Worth. I'm same for Twitter. Yeah, I'm a lot more active on Twitter nowadays. And then sign up for my email. So I promise it's hopefully one of the best emails in your inbox. I
Oh,
think so, but
absolutely.
maybe I'm just being cocky. But my website's just parkerworth.com. And if you sign up for my email, you get a free 5-minute viral story formula that I've used for myself and my clients. It's really fun. But yeah, hope to have you on the newsletter.
Yeah, absolutely. Sign for Parker's email list because there's so much to unpack from every email you receive. Once again, thanks a lot, Parker. We'll leave all as well, all the social media links, Parker's LinkedIn, our LinkedIn's, and Parker's X profile in the show notes as well, so you'll know where to find him. And thanks a lot for tuning in, and we'll see you again soon.